So during the shooting, who were you closest with, and as far as from the cast? And now that, obviously we're 50 years later, who are you closest with now?
I think I was closest with our little Carter family, especially with Stan. And I'm still very good friends with Stan now.
Oh, cool.
Melissa and I were very close on this show. And I think Leslie, the funny thing was, well, not being funny, the great thing was Michael Landon had carried his crew from his Bonanza days, and they were very bonded. And
Hmm.
so he created a family among crew and cast members. And there weren't to be any divas. Everybody was to be respectful and gracious and kind. So the six of us, it was Shannon Doherty who would play Jenny, Lauren Almanzo's niece. It would be the four of us Carters, and it would be the new school teacher who was Mike's daughter, Leslie Landon. The six of us came on at one time, and we were 100% embraced from day one by every cast and every crew member. It was as though
Wow.
we had walked into a show we'd been shooting for 9 seasons, the way some of them had been.
Wow.
So it was just a gift to be there. And I remember there was a lot of fun that was had between Melissa and I and Leslie. Uh, I think, yeah, I think as far as the three of us gals, we were close. But then Stan and I and the boys, we just really had a closeness. But I also was close to Kevin and to Dabbs, Kevin Baker as sorry, Kevin Hagan as Doc Baker and
Hmm.
Dabbs Greer as Reverend Alden. Close with both of them. I loved Richard Bull. Kathryn Macgregor and I, we did all right together. I really enjoyed acting lessons I would get from her and advice
Oh,
and stuff.
wow.
But but I never knew quite how to take her. And she gave me a gift. Nels and Harriet would give a Christmas gift that was from Nels and Harriet Olsen. And then she gave everybody a separate gift. And my gift was a gold keychain. It was like a rectangle and gold plate. And on it, in big block letters, it said bimbo.
What?
And
What?
yeah, yeah. And I thought, and that's just about the time bimbo was becoming to mean what we now think of it as. And I thought, is this a new bimbo or an old bimbo? What bimbo is this? And how does she really see me? And should I be laughing really hard? I just
Oh,
never quite knew, but I always felt comfortable with her. So
that's a
as I did
wild
with
story.
all of them. Yeah, yeah, it really was. Now, Dabbs and uh, I have a friend who really loved Vera Miles, loved Dabbs, loved everybody from the 50s, followed their careers, could tell me everything they'd been and had seen everything
Oh,
that
that's
they'd done.
cool.
And he wanted to meet both of them. I we we almost re-met Vera. I was the type of person who thought, I don't know if I can like invite myself into these
Yeah,
people's lives,
sure,
especially
sure.
after it was over. I didn't know the protocol, actor to actor. I have very few autographs. I have some. I have very good few photos. I just didn't know what would be appropriate on a set, what I could ask
Hmm.
people for.
Hmm.
So uh, with Dabs, I let the years go by. And my friend Doug kept asking me, please, can we meet him? And then one day he says, look, Pam, he's right here in Pasadena. He gives me his address. He's got his phone number. He's got everything on him. And I
Wow.
said, well, let me try. So I called him, and Dabbs was always so kind and gracious to me. And he was very, very happy to meet. He was slightly hesitant to meet Doug because, he didn't know him.
Sure.
So he drove
Sure.
himself to the restaurant instead of having us pick him up or anything. And we all three became fast friends, better friends than Dabbs and I had ever been on the show. And he just loved Doug. They had so much to talk about. They were both so intelligent, so industry savvy, good writers. Doug is a writer, and he would critique his work. And we had 6 years together with the three of us. And the
Wow.
two of them were together a lot more even than I was with the three of us. And when Dabbs passed, he was in dialysis, and we would go see him at the hospital. And on the day he died, Doug had gone in for I went in for the day in the daytime, and it was afternoon, and Doug went in the evening. And when I was there, I walked in and there was a preacher in there, a young man. He was holding his hand, and Dabbs was in and out of consciousness and lucidity. And the preacher said, "This is like the gift of a lifetime for me. I'm the hospital chaplain. I go around to 5 hospitals in Pasadena. And I can't believe I'm sitting here right now holding this man's hand." He said, "He's the reason I went into the clergy. I always, always wanted to go into the clergy. I was raised in the South. I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like the style of preaching, nor what I was hearing. And I turn on Little House one day and I see this man. And I think to myself, that's the kind of preacher I want to be." So I went through my training and then I became a preacher. And this is what I do. And it's what Dabbs or Reverend Alden did. And he said, "I cannot believe that I'm sitting here at the end of his life holding his hand." And again, it's one of those stories that just, it's, it's why I think this show means so much, is because it touches so many people's lives.
Yeah.
So we had that moment, and then he left and I stayed for a while, and then I left, and then in the evening Doug was there. And by about 9 o'clock, Doug, I think he either went to get something to eat, but he was gone. The nurse was with him when he passed, and the nurse called Doug and let him know. uh, but what an honor to have seen him through those last 6 years. He was all alone. His mother had passed. There was, I think, I don't really know if there were any relatives, but I don't think there were. um, so it was a privilege to have had the time that we had with him.
Wow,
Yeah.
what a moment. I mean that
Yeah.
I mean to the young preacher, I mean it's just wild.
Yeah.
That
Isn't
is
it?
I think that is what is so amazing. People always are like, look, it's television. But I think that that's why I focus so heavily on that time period. I think it is so much deeper than that. As you said, it affects people's lives. It's transformational. It affected this young man that went on to be a preacher. And then how wonderful that for whatever reason, I don't, everybody has their own beliefs and I respect that. But how amazing that the universe, however you want to put it, brought him back to Dabbs in those final moments to validate him in essence too. It's just cool. It's just
Yeah,
really cool.
truly. And John, we hear this all the time, all the time. We might not hear a personal story, but we'll hear the words, "You turned my life around," or "You saved my life," or uh, "This is the only show we watch. This is all we let our kids watch. This is what life should be and is." And I had a man come up to my table over this weekend with the 50th anniversary. And he came up and he's probably in his maybe 40s, late 30s, early
Mhm.
40s, young man. And he said, "I had a great mom. I have a great mom, but she was a working mother, single mother, and so she was not present at home a lot because she was so busy working. And I would come home and turn on Little House, and all those moms, whatever mom he was watching, he said that was my mom. That's where I got the nurturing and the love that my mom couldn't give me." And to hear when it comes from a male voice, it always takes me back. First of all, I'm somewhat surprised
Mhm.
because our demographic is usually the grandmother who had a daughter that may or may not have watched the show.
Agreed. That's right.
Yeah. And now she's got a daughter, and the granddaughter loves the show, and the daughter's coming back around to the show. So when the male energy comes in, I go, wow, whether it's a grandfather or a
Mhm.
young man like this, it just always touches me that or there are younger uh, young men coming through these lines of ours who we meet, and it's the boys who are watching, and it's
Mhm.
always very touching and impressive to me. And they all have a story. And one woman shared that she she was uh, she was an alcoholic and she couldn't quite get herself to stay away from drinking, and so would challenge herself, "If I don't drink this week, then I can watch Little House." And she might be good for a week and then the next week not. She always wanted her husband to watch the show with her, and he didn't like the show, so he
Mhm.
would never sit down with her. So one day he's watching her struggle and he says, "Okay, look, I will sit down and watch with you if you will, promise to stay sober for 1 month, which she did. And he sat down and he watched the show. And then she was so happy. And
Wow.
he stood up and he said, okay, give me another month and I'll do it next month. And 1 month at a time, he walked her into sobriety.
Mm. I
You
mean,
know, you're touching people left and right.
it,
And, I'm just along for the ride. I was just blessed and lucky to be a part of this. This is something
Mhm.
that was growing moss for a long time before I was on the show. But this is what's important. It's about people who are sharing these stories with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I absolutely love it. It just touches my heart on so many levels I can't even tell you. And
Yeah.
yeah. Um, oh, okay. So who who and now I guess we'll come to the present day. Who are you closest with from the cast these days? Like, I know that I've talked to I think it was Charlotte that's like I always room with so and so whenever we go to these events,
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
how about you? Who would you say you're closest with?
Well, because we're traveling so much doing these autograph signing tours, I've had the privilege of getting close with Dean and Allison, who I've been close with for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Um, Wendy and Jennifer Donati, who was Baby Rose on the show, and she
Yeah.
came to us at an autograph signing thing in Bakersfield. And she walked up to the table and points to her picture, and she said, "I was her." And it's as though your long lost twin sister came up to you and said
Wow.
that. It was a moment where all of us just embraced her, and she's such an incredibly inside and out beautiful human being, as is her
Hmm.
husband Eli and their daughter Aslan. They are incredible people. So now with Wendy and Charlotte and Jennifer and Allison and Dean, they're kind of the core who I feel the closest to. There are some other people who have
Sure.
joined us or coming now in and out. David has joined us on the tour. And of course, I always feel close to Dave. We've always stayed in touch over the years,
I
and his
love
parents
hearing
as
that.
well. So yeah, I'm sorry, that was just a given, like with Stan. And with Susan McCrae, the casting director, we've just always stayed in touch. But I would say that's the unit right there. Whenever I have the chance, like I just met Lucy Lee Flippin for the first time in my life, and she
Wow.
treated me like she'd known me forever. I mean, the chance to rekindle with Melissa, who I hadn't seen in a long time, where you pick up where you left off. Leslie Landon, I see her often or intermittently, I should say, and always feel comfortable with her, love her so much. So
Wow.
yeah, there's still a nucleus, and I suppose everybody has their nucleus because we are all just one cast member away from reaching everyone, right?
Yeah.
Somebody knows somebody or how to get somebody who maybe the rest of us have fallen out of touch with. So
Yeah.
we're still ever connected,
It's
which
a
is
small
great.
world. I mean, it is that little house world is really small. There's no doubt about
It
that.
is. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, just because I'm sure that I'll have some people saying, geez, why didn't you, talk to her about anything else, whatever. Not that they don't love Little House, believe me, they'll be thrilled, and I'm thrilled. But I want to do you justice. You mentioned Days of Our Lives, and you played Sandy Horton for many years,
Actually, there
right?
were many Sandy Hortons. I was
Yeah,
number four,
you're number
and
four.
I really only lasted a year
Oh, you were there a
because,
year. Yeah, because the character, I was going to say, I mean, it's like
yeah,
a long time. So
yeah.
what did that turn out to be after you were like, well, fine, and I've lost the weight, and here I go. What was it like?
Well, it was a whole different content. So the environment was very different. It was all about your appearance, not so much about your acting
Uh-huh.
skills. It wasn't so much about the cohesiveness of the cast. It was, you go in and you create your character. You try to create something that they can write from, which I didn't understand that.
Hmm.
And you fit into a world that, again, as I said earlier, I just wasn't comfortable in. They matched me up with two very great guys. Even as people, I think I got along with both of them as they did with me, and we cared about each other and respected each other. But as they told me I wasn't moving their storyline along, I was not steamy, sexy, hot enough. I wasn't
Isn't that
playing that.
wild?
I didn't want to. I wouldn't have known how. So I just, I was from the prairie and that's where I was comfy. So yeah, I really ended that myself by not knowing. Even a writer told me, Pam, you've got to give us something. We watch and we don't write every episode. And so when it's our turn to write, we're watching where your character's going. And you've got to give us something. You gotta turn up the heat. And yeah, I
Isn't
didn't.
that
And I
wild?
yeah, I was literally tanking their storylines. And in those, and probably still in those days, a fan letter meant a lot. And so they would read something and they'd assume 1,000 other people didn't write in and thought the same thing. So I think I just really excused myself from the show by not being what I should have been. So then it was whatever co-starring role I could get, which was nice for about a year because I had these two series regular roles back to back.
Yeah.
So I was hireable. And then I couldn't pay for an audition. I couldn't get arrested,
I
right?
hear that
So
so often.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, suddenly the roses and limousines and all that is there, it's gone. You're pumping your own gas and cleaning your floors, and it's all that's
Welcome to
gone.
Hollywood again. Yeah,
Yeah,
here you
right.
go. Yeah. That's fascinating about the soap. I look, I never made it huge as an actor, but I was out there, whatever. And I luckily I did get a couple of small parts on like General Hospital at one point. So I
Yeah.
know that what it's like to be on that set, and I know that whole vibe. But I never realized what you were just saying, how they're feeding off of your, I guess, whatever you're giving to the character. That is really interesting.
Isn't
Wow.
it though?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a good little mini lesson in acting
it
or on,
is.
on camera acting. Yeah.
Yeah, because usually you're absolutely right. The writer's rule. It's like that would be they would be creating it already. That's wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So I saw too that you were on or had been in the Social Network, the film.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
was that? I don't know enough about, like what your experience. What was it like on that? Because that was a great movie.
It was, wasn't it? And I think the audition process was more the focal point for me than actual doing it because
Huh.
when I did it, I'll cut to that part first. When I did it, it was early morning. We were walked to the set. They picked me up out of my trailer first, and then they picked up Jesse Eisenberg. We walked to the set, and he was very nice and gracious. Um, Barry Livingston was on the show and in that scene, and I always loved his work. And he
Yeah,
was very kind and gracious to me, but it was maybe 4 hours of work. It went really fast. It was just a half a day, and
yeah.
uh, it went fast. And I remember I think he was a grip. He came over and I think maybe he told Barry, and Barry told me, he said, he said, that they got it on the second take with you. Now, David
Wow.
Fincher, the director, was known for 27 takes of
Yeah.
one thing over and over and over.
Wow.
So that wasn't exactly happening. And so I felt like I gave him what he wanted and it was good. It was a set where we're in that long conference room and
Mhm.
Jesse Eisenberg is way at the other end. And I'm here and I'm sitting with an extra a background person who he's giving me lots of space. And, they do what they're supposed to do, but they're not going to over engage you
No,
or steal focus.
right.
So, and Barry was off over to my right out of reach as well. So it was kind of like you're all on your own and you're getting coverage of Jesse, you're getting coverage of Barry, and then coverage of me. And, I guess my stuff came out okay. We didn't spend a whole lot of time with it. I was very, very pleased when I saw what he did with it in the movie
Hmm.
and extremely proud of the fact that they used it in probably one of the best movie trailers I've ever seen. And it even, I think, won an award or something
Wow.
as a movie trailer. It was a beautifully done movie trailer, and it well, I mean, it follows this song uh, by Creep, I think, had made it famous, and it follows the song, and then all of a sudden, when you get to my part, the song stops. It's quiet. It's on me,
Oh,
and
wow.
back and forth with him. And it's just that moment of time. I had a lot of casting directors after that who I'd seen for years. I'd walk in the office, the first thing they would say, "What was it like to work with David Fincher?"
Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
suddenly it elevated my credibility a lot.
Wow.
It only lasts as long as it lasts, but it was a nice run of that. But it was the audition that I found really fascinating because I'd never met this casting director before, and she had everybody come in at once. It was different ethnicities, different ages, both genders. It was or all genders. It was just everything.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, the room was packed with people. And the assistant was carefully laying out the scripts. No one was given the script ahead of time.
Hmm.
Or I should say, as they call it, the scene you're going to read, which they call the sides. Nobody had seen their sides or their scene
That is
ahead of time.
wild.
Yeah. So you go in unprepared. We were not told who the three main stars were.
Hmm.
Uh, we didn't know the title of the movie. None of it was exposed. It was all very, very secretive. So we were all curious as to what we were there auditioning for. And you could tell there were some really strong professional actors, longtime actors in that room. You'd recognize them, or you could just tell by the way they carried themselves
Hmm.
or spoke. So we're all waiting. We're watching her do her work. And some people are chatting, but I didn't really personally know anyone in there.
Hmm.
So the casting director is setting up down the hallway with the video camera, and his assistant is out in the lobby area where we are. And the casting director kind of rolls through and is headed that way. She's come and gone a couple times. And one of the guys calls out, "Hey, can we get these scripts now?" She says, "No, not yet." And pretty soon, these two guys, there were two of them, and they were friends. They'd been talking a lot. They start bothering the casting assistant and saying things like, "So, what about this movie? Where does it take place? I don't know. So what scenes are you handing out? I don't know." Everything was I don't know to whatever they had asked.
Why
And
would you do
finally,
that?
yeah, well, there was a reason. I'm not sure I know what it is, but there was a reason that it was just super top secret. And none of us walked out
But I mean, why
with
would those two
those.
guys? I mean, if you
Oh,
got any common sense as an actor, you
yes.
would never cross that line.
Thank you for saying that
Yeah,
because, if you don't know, the casting assistant usually becomes the casting
that is
director at some
correct.
point, right?
That is
And they're
correct.
the person you really should have been nice to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know why, John, but they just kept doing that. But it got worse. We were finally all given our scenes, and it clearly says the word Harvard in there somewhere. And I think one of these guys was just goading her, and he said, "So, where does this take place?" And she says, "I don't know." And he said, "Oh, that's right. You're just the casting assistant."
Oh,
I think the whole room just went vacuumed out. All the air was gone. Nobody could believe he did that. And I am not so sure that the casting director had the camera running when for his audition because it wasn't too hard for that casting assistant to walk down that hallway and say, "He's coming in." And they would always cover the little red light so
yeah.
you wouldn't be intimidated or wouldn't really know
Mm,
whether they were rolling or not rolling. Because sometimes they roll during the "how are you" and "nice to meet you" chatter just to see what kind of a person you are as a
yeah.
human being. So yeah, that was really ugly. When I went in for my audition, I thought, what am I going to do for this? And I thought, well, it looks to me like in this character's real life, she would have read this. So I was familiar enough with the stuff she would not have read. And I kind of looked up at the casting director because you're playing off of her. And
Mhm.
I engaged with her. And then I say, "You're accused of," and then I start to read it off and then put it down, say, whatever I said,
Mhm.
what do you plead or whatever I said.
Yeah.
So there are lines that are conversational, and then there are lines that I just read. And and that's exactly the way he let me play it when we filmed it.
Wow.
So I thought, I think it was maybe making that tiny little choice
Hmm.
to do it and not to read everything or not to pretend to know and fumble with it, but just to go for it. So it was one of those auditions I walked away from and I felt good. I felt like, okay, there's a chance here. And we didn't hear for months. And I was pretty blown away that I heard back later.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow. That's
yeah.
pretty
So
cool.
yeah, you never know.
You don't. I've had so many people on and they've had like a similar story to what you just said about a casting moment. It's not that they were unprofessional, they were professional, but they went in and they kind of, as you said, they kind of just made that split second decision to either not read a couple lines, maybe throw the script. I mean, Henry Winkler, classic example. I think he was in there and he has dyslexia. He couldn't know the lines anyway, and he kind of just used it, you know. And it's just really incredible. I wish I had known more of that when I was out there really doing the auditioning. But I think it's a
Isn't that
fascinating
true?
point, you know.
It is. I had a friend who was on St. Elsewhere for his audition. He was playing a doctor, and it was in the emergency room, and they were calling out all kinds of everythings, right?
Yeah.
So he just took off his tennis shoe, and as he's got the lines memorized, and as he's going through them, he's just unlacing his tennis shoe as fast as he can. Has nothing to do with being a doctor. What a brilliant choice
It,
to make him, under fire, under pressure, moving fast, and
right, right.
yeah, and
I
to be
love it.
sidetracked. I did too. It was a fun choice.
That's cool. That's really cool. Okay, a couple other shows, and because you've been so great, but I want to know Murder She Wrote because of Angela Lansbury. I am I correct on this? You appeared in more than one episode.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
The first one in two different parts, because I think in that day you could actually come back to a show and play a different role. They don't
Hmm.
do that anymore. You can come back only as yourself, and often you're not invited back to a set. So it was fun to be able to do it twice. The first time my scene was with Mike Farrell from MASH.
Oh, he's been
So
on. I just got to throw it. I love him.
I
Anyway, go on.
know. I did too. He was fabulous. So that was a big win for me right there. It was a big win. But then the second time I got to go back and play Angela Lansbury's uh, publicist.
Oh gosh.
And we're in the house. I'm trying to get her all prepped for her interview and get her in the taxi to get her to fly up to Portland, of all
Oh,
places,
how
where I was
cool.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really a kick. I loved it. I was as nervous as I could be. Here's an icon,
Mhm.
and I'm just enamored by her. And it's early in the morning, and we were all in makeup and ready. Start shooting at 8. It's probably 8:30. I'm as nervous as I can be, grasping for words and lines. And she held me by the hands at one point, took her hands, held mine in hers, and said, my dear, there's nothing to be nervous about here. You're with family. And, her son was directing.
Oh
She was
no.
there, many family members working on crew. And I just thought, okay. And everything was fine after that. But it was like, oh, how do you act next to this amazing, amazing woman?
Oh,
So yeah, it was a gift, real gift.
wow. I mean, how much does that say about Angela Lansbury? Just that moment.
Don't you think? Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
She was gracious forever. I saw her years later, and it was some event in Hollywood, and I went up to her and I said, I had the good fortune of meeting and doing one of your episodes, and of course she wouldn't have ever remembered and didn't,
Yeah.
but she was still really gracious, and yeah,
Wow.
it's nice.
I
Real
love
nice.
that. Oh my gosh, I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, me
Last
too.
last one is uh coming more to the present. Grey's Anatomy. What was your experience like on Grey's Anatomy?
What stays in John Cato's room, a Zoom room? What happens? What's revealed stays. Okay, let me make this good, because I won't name any names. Okay.
No, that's
It was
fine.
the, I think, third year, second or third year.
Hmm.
Uh, so the show was young. These kids were
Oh yeah.
hot.
It's
They
like
were
18 years
famous.
now or something, some ridiculous. I don't even
Yeah.
know what it is. Yeah.
And there's a lot that happens when your fame hits hard, and you're a young person. It's a different life, and they are not to be blamed for it. You suddenly have to guard your privacy. You're suddenly getting everything you ever wanted. Your dreams have come true, and you get
Yeah.
spoiled, and stuff is thrown at you. And so, yeah, the director was a man who I'd worked with on a recurring role I had called Jack and Bobby, and I was Ed Begley Jr.'s wife on the show. And I did 4 episodes. I loved the show. It starred Christine Lottie, and it was a
Oh,
very progressive, advanced show, a little too smart for its time, I think. So it didn't last but 13 episodes,
mm-hmm.
I think, maybe 26, but I got to do 4 of them. And along the way, I got to work with this director named David Paymer. David Paymer is a guy everybody would know.
I was going
He
to say
was in
the actor. We're talking about the actor
actor.
David Paymer. Oh, of
Yep.
course. Yeah.
And he directed a lot of what was there, a young kids show starring some boys? Was it um Fern something? It was
I
popular.
think there was this show Firmwood. I think
Yeah,
that's
I think he directed a lot of those. He's a well-known, well-respected director and a very well-known, well-respected actor. He is solid in Hollywood.
mm-hmm.
So he's directing this episode. And I had, when I had done Jack and Bobby and we finished that, he had directed my last episode, which was a really big one. It was a really big one where our daughter dies in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
Very emotional, and he was such a good director. And I sent him a thank you note, a handwritten one, which kind of wasn't really done in those days.
Yeah, I love it though. Yeah.
So yeah, so when I went to the Grays audition, I see him walking by. And I said, and this was like months later, 6 months maybe. I
Yeah.
said, David, Pam Roylance from Jack and Bobby. He says, I know who you are. Thank you for your thank you card. And I mean, he remembered this stuff.
I love that.
He said, what do you, oh, you're auditioning for April. He said, yes, yes, good luck. I won't see you today, but I'll see you at the callback. He just outright said that. And I hadn't even auditioned yet, let alone gotten the callback. So I went, wow, okay, thank you. I went in, did the audition, and got the callback. And when I go in for the callback, he jumps out of his chair. There are 5 people in there. I think Shonda Rhimes was in there.
Wow.
And the director, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, the executive producer or one of the producers.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 2 or 3 other people, David as well, in that 5. And he jumps out of his chair and he comes over toward me and he takes me by the hand. He said, this is the one. This is the one I told you about. She was so good in Jack and Bobby, and he was very animated. And I was like, wow. And he says, but I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna sit down, let her do
Oh,
her.
jeez.
So I went, thank you. And
Yeah.
it's a little like putting you on the spot, but really a nice validation at the same
Right. It
time.
goes both ways there. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And the scene is sad. The scene is unplugging our mother from a resuscitator because
Mm.
she was not supposed to be on one. So do the scene, everything just comes the way I'd hoped it would. And I walked away and I booked the role. I go, to see him on the first day of shooting. And I said, thank you for this. He said, no, you did it. You did this. Yeah, this is, I'm happy to work with you again, but I don't have the final say here. So I'm working with, the scene is my girlfriend and I come down from Seattle. I mean, come down from we go to Seattle. We go from Portland up to Seattle, I think.
Again,
And
here
we're,
we go. Portland
yeah,
again.
here we go again. Yeah, isn't that weird?
It is
And we're
weird.
unplugging mother. And so she happens to be, her name is Teddy Seidel. She happens to be married to Gary Cole, you would know Gary Cole to see him, the
Of course.
actor.
Gary Cole was
Yeah,
like a million
yeah,
roles. The
a
father, by the
million.
way, in the Brady Bunch movies. Yeah.
Oh, yes, you're
Yeah.
right. Yes.
I know who
So
he is.
yeah, they're a well-known couple, and she gets work, and they're personal friends of David Paymer, who is directing this episode of Grays.
Wow.
So all of a sudden on this set, there's some fighting going on that has hit the newspapers between a couple of cast members, and it's still hot. And all of a sudden, something happens, and the scene starts out here. There's a steady cam, and the scene's going to move like this on these 3 actors. And then it's going to cut over here to Teddy and I talking to another actor. And then it's going to, as we make an exit, it's going to follow one more time. So it's got 3 things it's got to do.
Yeah.
And it's a long scene that way because there's a bit down the hallway, there's a bit here with me, there's a bit over there, and so it's like 3 scenes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a long time, and uh, all of a sudden, it's starting down here. We hear David call action, and we just hear, could we just shoot that? And then some
Oh,
expletives come out, and it's scene, and the place goes quiet. There isn't anyone that's stopping this. There isn't anyone that's saying, hey, hey, hey. No, it's just an uncomfortable feeling. Now, all the cast had welcomed Teddy and I. All the cast was
sure.
wonderful who was there that day shooting. They were
Yeah.
really great to us. But this was some in-cast fighting,
Right.
and it wasn't our battle by any means.
Oh,
Um, but that was going on, and then all of a sudden there was this negative talk coming up about the director. Now, all of a sudden we hear this negative talk, and they say back to one, which is go back to the place you started, and we're going to reshoot this. We hear this negative talk, and then we turn, and Teddy whispers to me, for all I know, we could be sleeping with this director. Why would they say something like that?
right.
And I said, I know, and you're really good friends with him, and I worked with him before. We
Oh, is
both
that
love him.
weird?
Why would they say that? Because they didn't know. And they spread this very negative stuff about this director just all over to the crew and everything.
Right.
And we asked him, how do you put up with this? He said, well, I direct over at Fernwood. I'm used to what it's like when somebody is sort of new to their fame and fortune. And, we've all been there. He said, I just try to get my job done and dealing with the attitudes at that point. I know those people. I know one of them mellowed out because that had to happen or the career was over. The other one mellowed out because you do over time. You
Yeah.
learn what's important and
Yeah.
how to be a team member and
Yeah.
how to deal with the fame. So more credit to them for that. But
Mm.
it was kind of an uncomfortable day to be around. And David was nominated for an Emmy for directing that episode.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. And I mean, the talk was, oh, this director is so terrible. No one will ever work with him ever
Oh,
again.
oh, come on.
And so really, you have no idea where he's come from. And obviously, I'm sure they've lived to rethink that. So,
Yeah, yeah, but
yeah.
it's a great
So,
example of like you're young in Hollywood and you make it big, and
yeah.
that's exactly right. And everybody says you're so great, you're so great, you're so great.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. No
Yeah.
knows. Yeah, and that
Yeah.
happens. Yeah,
No knows. And bottom line, you've got to be a team player. Bottom line, and I know they've learned that, and it's a great show,
yep.
and they're great people, and we all learn our lessons,
Oh
right?
yeah, of
We've
course.
all been there.
You know, it's such an irony too, because you're talking about David Paymer. David Paymer is one of those probably, I mean, he's one of the top underrated actors ever as well, because when he's in a scene, he normally steals the scene. He doesn't mean to, he just has that presence. And
Yeah,
so I, not that I've heard his name constantly, but I've heard it a few times, never a negative. And that's
yeah,
just so funny. And
yeah.
the other thing, Little House, having talked to, oh boy, I'm pretty sure. God, hey, Charlotte will kill me if I got that wrong. Maybe it is Charlotte, but that the dressing rooms, you didn't all have like separate trailers. Like there wasn't like this, like 20 trailers out there. Everybody had their own dressing. I heard a lot of you were together. Like that was part of the whole bonding too. Like he said, I think she said that Victor and Michael might have shared a trailer or something like that. Is
Yeah,
that true?
yeah, I think that is true. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. And I don't think either one of them were in there very often, but I think they did. Yeah.
Hey, yeah,
Yeah. Funny, I can't even remember that as far as
yeah,
myself, who
yeah.
I was sharing with, or yeah,
That's cool though, but that shows you, that also keeps everybody kind of like level. Like, look, we're a team here. Let's get this done.
yeah,
Rather than,
yeah,
we're all like, oh, you're big now, that kind
yeah,
of. So
absolutely.
that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Last thing, and then I'll let you go, is I asked this of everybody, and if you do, great. If you don't, are there any charities or anything that you give to it, or anything like that you'd like to, let people know about? And are there any events coming up that you want to let someone know about? I don't always release this like the next week, but it's good to
Uh-huh.
like have people know. So
Yeah, what I would highly recommend the pancreatic cancer, the PanCan group. We were fortunate enough to meet all of them during the 50th. It's my first meeting with them, but it's who the Landon family is affiliated with on behalf of their father with the pancreatic cancer. And I highly encourage people to have a look at that. Also, for me, anything children focused. I
Yeah.
have such an affinity for children and children's charities. I know personally, I'm not affiliated with something at this time,
Hmm.
but sort of just generally speaking, that's where my heart goes.
Yeah.
Um,
Me too.
the other thing you were saying, oh, something coming up. I don't have
I kind of
anything at the
understand why you
moment.
wouldn't, the way, based on everything that you just had.
It so comes and goes. Well, of course, we're starting this tour now that the 50th is over. We start this coming tour. We're in Grand Rivers, Kentucky, and then we go
Yeah.
to the Cherry Blossom Festival in Missouri next. So we're starting a monthly thing. We go somewhere else across the country for a month. We'll be someplace different. So looking forward to that. But
Mhm.
yes, always still auditioning and always waiting for that next thing.
I
And
love it.
loving life and career right now because I'm in this character age and playing characters I found out is much more fun than playing ingenues
Hmm.
because I mean I had I think two or three roles in a row where I was this woman with Alzheimer's and I was Patrice and Patty and always in a bathrobe, always in slippers, always with hair everywhere and yellow teeth. And it was like the stereotypical in there was a movie and Nancy Drew.
Wow.
Just, yeah, it was really wild. So at first I thought, oh, I'm a little embarrassed. And then I thought, this is really fun.
Hmm.
So yeah, right now it's all about the reruns, but hopefully I can give you something new and I'll let you know when
No, it's
that.
fine. It's funny about Hollywood when you come in and you're younger and there's a lot of you and you're like, in your 20s, 30s, it's like very competitive and I've heard this and it's true. And then some people go back and they get on the bus, so to speak, and they go back and
Yeah,
they leave Hollywood. They're done. And then so
yeah,
there's a weird 40s, 50s kind of vibe there where it's like, I don't know what's out there for me type of thing. And then I've heard once you go into the 60s, hitting 70s, well, now you're a much smaller group and more interesting roles. So it is an interesting.
yeah. I think that's very true. And I love that you phrased it because Dabbs told me, uh, you're going to act as long as you don't get on the bus and go home. I thought it's
Right.
funny you just said that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's true. Although right now I'll have to say that if you're in the baby boomer era, you are in one of the largest populations of the 60, 70-year-old group
Oh
that we've
my
had,
gosh.
right?
Yeah.
So it really snapped us hard with our Screen Actors Guild health insurance
Big time.
because we need more things. We need
Hmm.
more attention to our health, and they found that there were many more claims than they were ready for. So it shifted everything. So we kind of had an unfortunate thing go down with the way we thought it was going to be at this age as to what it really is right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I need to get working again.
Exactly. I
So
understand. I do. I really
yeah.
do understand that. And I know the minimums and all that. Okay. Well,
Right.
Pam, it's just been a complete pleasure. I could talk to you for hours. You are just a wonderful person, and it's just been a lot of fun. So, thank you for being on the show, and I'm sure I say for the Little House fans, thanks for being out there and continuing the legacy.
Thank you, John. Thank you for being a wonderful interviewer. You made my experience here very fun and enjoyable. To all the fans of the show, thank you so much for all you have done for us and continue to do for us. And thank you all for putting up with the light show behind me. So I appreciate that.
All right. Well, take it easy, Pam.
All
Thank
right. Thanks so much. All
Appreciate you.
right.
As always, thanks for listening, and please hit the subscription button and the notification bell so that you can be notified when I have a new episode. And also go check out some of my other episodes, like Jerry Mathers, Henry Winkler, Judy Norton, so many. Enjoy.